secret of the you now been recorded on the Perplex program. Reuven Wolf, Howard Kassow, and Lev Melik already here. And we're glad to hear that Howard is doing good. His shiny face. He is doing good from Atlanta, Georgia. And Reuven from
Howard, were you sick?
Well, he has major surgery.
Had open heart surgery.
Open heart. Oh gosh. Bypass?
No, I had a weak spot in one of the aortas,
Oh,
and now I don't.
oh, it's aneurysm,
Well, yeah, I guess you could say it was.
pre-aneurysm.
They were afraid that if I didn't do something about it, it would burst, which is
You don't want that.
that's almost certain death.
Yeah.
Well, good thing you took care. Good, worked out good for you, Baruch Hashem. And Daniel, we see you joining in, but we don't see you and we don't hear you. You there? Daniel from Beersheba, hello? I guess he's working on technology, instrumentation. Welcome to the high-tech world, gentlemen. All right, today's open topic, but I think Reuven, I forgot. Did you last time you presented the topic? Any particular thoughts you want to share with us with the group? Anybody? Howard, Reuven, Daniel?
Nothing particular. I was interested, like presented last time, in the origins of the conflict in Israel. But it's very interesting. I heard a talk by Rabbi Jacobson. What would be the Hasidic view of the argument between the left and the right in Israel? And he said, actually, the Hasidic view would be not to focus on politics, but to focus on love and, Ahavat Yisrael. In other words, doing whatever we can to find common ground and to share love and to respect other people. In a way, it's like even if they don't respect you, still try to be kind, try to be loving.
Yes.
And try to put hatred out of your heart instead of find a place of love. So you can see some of the Lubavitchers who went to the leftist rally, I think in Tel Aviv, and started handing out pizza. It was, so that's one way, just.
And the only complaint will be there was no mushrooms on it or olives or something, right?
Yeah, that could have been another riot there, Maybe block some roads until they get the mushrooms and olives out.
Daniel, we see your microphone goes on and off. Are you with us? We see this. We see the your name on the screen, so you're connected, but we don't. You see your mic. Okay, now your microphone is off. It looks like you're trying to do something, but you still see a blank. We see your name.
I hear you. Hold on.
All right.
We hear you, but we don't.
Oh, now we see
do.
you. We hear you.
I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Oh, wonderful. Hello, Reuven. Hello, Howard. Hello, Lev.
Hi, hi.
Hello.
Daniel just came back
Not
from the
so
US
hot.
trip. You just came last
came
week
back
from
from where?
American trip, right, Daniel?
I spent 2 months in Maine, in the woods of Maine. It's
Okay.
north of Boston.
So you
Sounds
missed the
nice.
woods. No, woods are great there.
Yeah, it was lovely. It was quiet, sort of remote area, but I enjoyed it very much. There's and there's not much of a Jewish community there, so we were on our own. We did attend shul on Shabbat, but it was quite a ways away, so we had to sort of make arrangements. But it was a lovely time. It was cooler and very green compared to Beersheba.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
You know, it's interesting. My rabbi told me this funny story. You probably all heard it. It's a classic. Like Jews, there was a small Jewish community. They have exactly 10 guys. And every morning they have a minyan. They come to Shachrit morning and they have a minyan. For years, minyan, everything works. 10, exactly 10. Not 9, no 11, 10 guys, everything working fine. And then one family moves in. So now they have 11. Well, the next day, they didn't get a minyan. Get it?
When the family moved in.
Another family moves in. Now there's 11 guys. In the morning, there's no minyan. Because everybody thinks, well, another guy is now in town. They have minyan. I don't need to go.
Yeah, that makes sense. Everyone thinks the other guy's gonna be there.
I know. Hey, Jonathan of Nairia is on connecting to us. He's cleaning his microphone wires, with a brush.
Baruch Hashem.
He's got his shirt on today, so that means he is no problem now have air conditioner on.
Yo,
Shalom,
Yonatan.
Can you hear us, Jonathan?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. How are you doing? Everybody has exchanged their hello. Everybody's feeling good. Howard is fully recovering from his heart surgery. Daniel is recovering from his trips to the woods of Maine for 2 weeks. Reuven and I are recovering from the dust storm in Beersheba, whatever we had today. How are you doing?
Just had a beautiful meal at a restaurant on the Tayelet next to the breaking waves of the Mediterranean Sea.
Oh, you're making us jealous. Are you recovering from a fall from a bike last time?
Yeah, that's already almost 2 weeks ago. I'm better now.
Good to see you again. All right, okay. Today we didn't have any particular topic. We're just welcome to talk anything you guys want to share as a group or ask questions.
So tell us about your affiliation with this party to run for council.
Are you asking me?
Yeah,
Oh, Jonathan will criticize me immediately. Levy is monopolizing all the time. Don't let anybody talk. Okay, I'll tell. I joined. I mean, Harvard and Daniel, you probably don't know. I created my own party. I never been in politics. Just for the heck of it, I decided to run for the city of Beersheba. The reason for that, because we have achieved great success in our neighborhood. In our neighborhood, we have a typical Israeli attitude. That there's a balagan, there's a papers on the street, and it's like the Jonathan's wife is doing a big mitzvah work. She's cleaning the beaches. Most Israelis say, "Come on, knock it off. No, nothing will help." And she and Jonathan decided doing and showed results. Same thing here. Nobody said it'll help, but it helped a lot. We have now less balagan. We have a police going to the area. There's no more hooligans coming. We cleaned up the area, and based on the success, I decided to run for the council of Beersheba.
What was happening? What was happening?
It's a Shchuna Hay. We live on Gilboa Street, typical neighborhood where kids come at night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and they're out there, they make noise. But kids like 15, 16 years old, and 1 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden you wake up because of banging on the rails or something like that. So people complain, and in America, they will police will take care of it in 1 day. You'll be quiet.
Good.
But
Don't count on that.
here police comes 1 o'clock, opens the window, call Beseder, and just drives off. So we get sick and tired of that. We have a lawyer, we are organized, we have a WhatsApp group with like 100 people. And we methodically started to push that. We got a community watch. And to make a long story short, they cleaned it up. But that's one thing. And second one,
That's good.
it was a typical dirty area. Typical, I mean, since we have Americans on the line, I don't want to say anything negative about the Israelis, about the Jews. We're not supposed to do that. So, but we have a typical, somebody eats ice cream, takes a wrap and just throws in the street, moves on, normal. What's a big deal? And somebody will clean it. So we started to clean and bring that attitude of cleanness. And now our neighborhood is clean. I mean, at least a lot more cleaner. And we have 200 people living here, and nobody believes it. They say, come on, welcome to Israel. It's not going to happen. Nobody cares. Ain't of our, nothing will happen. But it worked.
It's good.
And people have, like, you look at people, and it's a typical bunch of Russians, a bunch of Sephardis, a bunch of Moroccans, a bunch of Ethiopians, normal, simple people. And all of a sudden, they have like little hope in their eyes. It looks like we did it. And now you can look outside. There's no papers laying. I mean, mostly no papers there's on sidewalks. People just.
It's
when
good. It's good.
So we did that. So based on that, I said, well, I want to expand this program to the rest of the city. So I decided for the city council. When you run to the city council, I mean, I don't know what's the city council. I don't know what the city is. I don't know what the council is. I don't know what to run is, and I don't know who I am. So everything in this sentence, I have a big question rather than answers. So I just started. I went to the election committee. I learned there's such an election committee. To register, you need to pay 28,000 shekels just to register be on the ballot.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, how should I do it? How should I do it? All of a sudden, so I created a group. My group will be Lamed Beit, Lev. And of course, in Israel, you can, if you want to have a party, you just make a party. You know, there's 30 parties, 40 parties. But in order to make it, just to get in, you have to get, let's say, roughly 3% of the votes. 3%. If you don't get 3%, like in general politics, the party, you just don't get in. If you get 2.1%, you just don't count. So the parties that were here, Likud, Otzma Yehudit, they all made 5, 7, 11% more than 3 just to be in. And so my party will have no chance. All of a sudden, I get a call from this party. And these guys are ultra-Orthodox. It's a Hasidim. Number one guy is an Ashkenazi Hasid who was a payas to his knees and a beard. No word of English, only Hebrew and Yiddish. His number 2 guy is a Sephardi guy. Number 3 guy is like a Gabbai from a Moroccan shul. So they say, you want to be with us, you'll be number 4. And then I don't have to pay 28,000 shekels because they already got this registration. So now I created a block. Now you guys hear this only in the news, created block and factions and fractions. I'm fully honored them. So I created a block. Now my chances—
You're forming a government.
Forming a government. Now my chances to get in was like 1 millionth of a percent. These guys, the chances maybe 100th of a percent or maybe less. Together we have like maybe 200th of a percent. But still, we all excited. Now they want to make they have a program, they have a 2,000 people followers and all that. Anyway, that's just my 5 minutes presentation. I'm in politics now. So I created this brochure. Now, my platform, usually the politicians promise a lot and deliver nothing. My platform is small. I don't promise the world. Clean Beersheba. If dog is pooping on the street, if police sees this, 700 shekels fine. And if the guy takes a garbage and it doesn't throw in the garbage, but next to the garbage, like 5 meters, because he's too lazy to make 2 more steps to throw in the garbage, picture, send to the area municipality, nail him fine. I even wanted to, which probably not a practical idea. I talked to a friend of mine with David. You know David, Reuven. David is he's a perplexed king. We have a government in exile. David Hamelech, he's a king. Reuven, the chief medical executioner. I am chief executioner. So we have a government in exile. You guys are welcome to join, of course. And so we're discussing how to approach this. And I said to him, David, let's do this. Let's do like in Russia, in Soviet Union used to do it. If I call and I take a picture and send a picture of the guy who just didn't clean after his dog, if the area nails him and he gets a 710 shekels fine, I get 10%. So I get 7. So there's incentive to report the guy. But he said it sounds like snitching. You know, it sounds like in Soviet Union, you tell the guy, and next thing you know, he gets 20 years in prison. So he says, I don't know, it's a good idea. I said, but why not? I'm not just going to my neighbor that my neighbor is voting for Communist Party or for Donald Trump, and we have to arrest him. I just reporting something clean. So that
sounds a little bit like the KGB.
It sounds like KGB, but I said, but listen, if we did this, all the Russians in Beersheba, all the retired Russians, all the 70-year-old pensioners will be walking around with a camera, hoping to make 70 shekels if they capture the guy. And I would then Beersheba, like within 1 week, will become like Singapore, clean and speak and span. So anyway, those are my ideas. This is my run for the Beersheba Council and government. That's my update, Reuven, to your question.
Lots of success.
Okay. And
I'll vote for you.
Jonathan's wife is doing similar thing in Nairobi. She comes in with her friends and cleans the beach. And I'm sure she also initially heard, it's not going to work. They don't care. And she doesn't. And I think that's the way to do it. What they say, there's a lot of naysayers. You just do what you can.
So Lev, your Hebrew must be getting good. You're getting fluent in Hebrew?
I'm getting, well, that's actually my hidden reason. If I get to the Council of Beersheba, already I'm going to this meeting with the election committee. I'm sitting there and other parties sitting. And I said something, and I go in English. I don't understand. The guy says, Lev, only Hebrew. This is not America. You want to be in council, you have to speak Hebrew. So to me, it's a great ulpan. I'm forced to start using my Hebrew. So that's a good. That's a way. That's a way to do ulpan. Not 7 months sitting there and just aleph bet, but just go immediately somewhere and just talk whatever you can. I bet in 2-3
I
months.
heard a lecture from an American rabbi who moved to Israel, and he got interested in doing something to improve the prison system. Somehow he ended up hooking up with a party, and miracle of miracles, he joined them and he got enough votes to be in the parliament. So one of the perks is if you don't have good Hebrew, they will assign you 30,000 shekels to hire a tutor for Hebrew.
Wow.
So we got this retired colonel who worked him multiple days of the week, until his Hebrew was good enough to keep up with the parliament. So
I love it. Oh,
that's your
great.
next step. That's your next step.
Thanks, Ruben. It's a great idea. That's a great idea. I
To be
appreciate
an MP.
Yeah. Well, you guys, I mean, we are government in exile. Ruben, like I said, Ruben, chief medical doctor. David is a king. I'm
Medical
executioner.
officer, yeah.
So whatever you guys, we might have a dental consulting position within the government. That's for Harvard. And Danielle, you might be. Well, Jonathan, you might have a myofascial release application, like a special relaxation techniques. Danielle, you play music, I think, Danielle, no?
Yeah, the cello. Yeah, I played the cello.
You'll be in charge of the Levim in the Beit HaMikdash when they play the hymn. So we have all the positions. We're government in exile already in Israel, forming government.
Okay.
Sounds like a good idea.
Halabai. We'll have a Beis HaMikdash to erect.
Yeah.
This is a good idea for America. It could be cleaned up from coast to coast.
Well, yes, start there. Well, I tell you what, it's interesting, guys. About 20 years ago, I published a paper because, I'm a pump guy. I have in our body, there are several pumps, positive displacement pump, the heart of the pump, since I'm a pump expert on working pumps. So I wrote an article because I did a lot of time, even at that time, 20 years ago, consulting in the Middle East. I traveled extensively in Israel, of course, in Australia, all over, in whole Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan, all these countries I traveled on consulting. And I wrote a paper that will happen soon. And that was 20 years ago. And I published a paper in Pumps and Systems magazine, which is the leading pump magazine of the United States. I'm an associate editor of the magazine that showed the pipeline coming from Saudi Arabia, through Jordan, over to Eilat, then through Israel, and then north through Lebanon, over to Turkey, and from Turkey to Europe. And the pumps, and I calculated power and the flow rates and everything else. And that oil is driven roughly 5,000 horsepower pumps, big pumps to transfer, which is pipeline. And I have experience with pipelines. And then in order to drive those motors, you take a dam because 100 years ago, Herzl's idea was to take a drop from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea, 500 meters, and that creates a dam that generates hydraulic power to drive those engines. And I put pictures, illustrations, and whole calculations. And then Hezbollah becomes just like in America. Your great-grandfather was robbing trains in Idaho somewhere in 1820, and now his grandson is a respectable banker because this is what it's. So Hezbollah will be in charge of security. They'll make sure that the pipelines are operating nice and good. And I published a paper with the pictures, calculations, oil, the whole region, how secondary towns around the pipelines will prosper. And now when you see that Saudi Arabia is doing these ideas to do exactly that through Israel over to Europe pipeline. And I was telling my family, this is an article I published in a magazine, maybe, 2002 or something like that. And it's just amazing to see. And they'll laugh at me. Come on, it'll never happen. Peace with Saudi Arabia, it'll never happen. I said, look, the day will come when you get on the plane and fly to Riyadh from Tel Aviv. They all laughed at me. And I showed them the paper I published 20 years ago. And I'm so pleased to see that it actually is happening right now and that you see it on the news.
When we first arrived in Israel in 1995, all of the talk was with the new initiative for the Med-Dead Canal to create that water power. And they had donated either $5 million or $50 million to jumpstart the project. This was not just to do feasibility, but to actually start. And the money disappeared.
Surprise.
The money disappeared. That's why 20 years later, we don't have a Med-Dead Canal. I think that a Med-Dead Canal would get stopped in its tracks by the environmentalists.
Well, there's a pluses and minus, because I also proposed a river in Beersheba. I talked to Ruvik Danilovich, the mayor of Beersheba. Ruvik and I are best buddies, of course. Nice for me to say, Ruvik. Of course, I'm just kidding. And I proposed to make a river about 10 kilometers. And if you make a river in the desert, there's a slope, of course, coming from the east to west. And Beersheba is natural, mountains coming down to the Mediterranean. So you can float the river down. But once after telling the float, you need to have a pumping station to pump him back up the hill. And then it flows by gravity again. But that takes a lot of energy. So I said to them, I know a lot of important people in America, people who work for Amoco Oil and Colonial Pipeline. They will be glad to finance this. And from their standpoint, they'll say, well, we're not just a blood-sucking capitalists to make money. We had to think about, like Amoco Oil will say, we are for people. We're humanitarians. Look at the projects we do. We made a river in the desert. So they can put these little things. And of course, I proposed this idea in Beersheba. And of course, like Jonathan said, I say, well, nice, very nice. Of course, it goes nowhere. So good ideas don't necessarily immediately happen. It takes time, and it comes back. And it has, as Lenin said, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. No, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. That's Lenin's thing.
Jonathan, what was the idea from the Mediterranean to the Dead Sea, a canal? For what purpose? For commerce?
For energy. If you take the Mediterranean at 0 meters at sea level, and you drop that water minus 300 meters down to the Dead Sea, if you have a turbine at the bottom of that water drop, you've got a lot of energy, potential energy becoming kinetic.
Hydroelectric power.
Yep.
And Lev, you're suggesting the same thing, but a different route, a river for a different route?
Well, there's
a different project.
There's 2 things. What Jonathan is talking about is to connecting Red Sea to the Dead Sea. There's roughly 500 meters drop.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see.
It's like Mississippi. It's like a hydraulic dam over Grand, what's this in America? Grand something dam in the West. Grand Coulee, right?
Yeah.
It would flow north. It would flow north.
No,
Red Sea to the Dead Sea.
If
Lev is talking about Red Sea, Dead Sea. But from the Red Sea, or from Eilat to the Dead Sea, is quite an elevation. You have to go up and before you can go down. It's longer to tunnel from the Mediterranean, but I don't know, maybe it is easier from the Red Sea.
There's 2 proposals. Herzl started it's like 100 and some years ago, 150 years ago, maybe. If you look in what do you call that, Google Map Earth, you'll find when you drive, Daniel, to the Dead Sea to swim, from Beersheba, pretty soon there's a steep incline, and you go and a drop from where you are and I today into the Dead Sea is roughly 500 meters, 1,500 feet. So that drop is slow, but if you put a dam in the middle, you're essentially creating just like hydraulic dam in a river. You put a block, a big like a reservoir, and when you're dropping this 500 meters drop, and you put hydraulic turbines, when they spin and you put the reversible
Some
motors,
water.
it'll create the tremendous amount of electricity. Now, if you just, but also you can also control the level of the Dead Sea. Dead Sea is drying, and if you replenish it with water, now as Jonathan said, there's a lot of issues to that. Is it the same water with a salt or a Red Sea when it mixes with Dead Sea create some chemical reaction that would adversely affect? There's many issues.
This one's a decanter or something else.
Technical
Yeah.
issues,
Wine.
lots of
I
things.
use wine for cooking,
But
One.
if you accomplish this, you can
and
generate.
then I got some other bottles
I have
for
some interference.
the Yontif.
Okay, so
No, it's in
what are you gonna do with this energy? So if you
One's in
imagine that
me,
there's a line going across Route 90 from Eilat towards the Dead Sea, that line right now, you're driving the car, there's nothing, a couple kibbutzim, moshavim, nothing. But if all of a sudden along this route of energy, you have a huge dam like Grand Coulee Dam, it's a lot of water. It's a salt water, of course, not fresh water. But you can put desalination plants, entire region, what Ben Gurion was saying, the salvation of Israel comes from the south. So they'll become literally a garden, green garden. The desert will turn into the garden. Atmosphere will change, nature will change. Now, of course, some people say, we don't want that. We want the desert because with new evaporations, maybe it will become more humid, whatever. So there's issues against that idea. But fundamentally changing entire nature in the area. Save the Dead Sea, but the energy, you can drive the pumps from that energy that now pump oil from Saudi Arabia through Jordan and Israel to Europe. So there are multiple things. Second thing, not related, as Johnson, to that, is a much smaller project magnitude, which is a river in Beersheba. That's a dwarf analogy of that. It's a small project, just 10 kilometers, 5 miles, flow the river, take those, it's not, you go to the Dead Sea, as you're driving by the Dead Sea Works, Yam HaMelech, you see the white mountains there of sand. That's not the sand, that's a salt. Because they take the salt minerals from the Dead Sea, they take magnesium and other good stuff, which is good for health, but the regular salt, nobody wants it. They just dump it. It becomes nice, beautiful, wide mountains of salt. If you take the salt free, you can go with the truck and pick it up. If you take the salt and put it along the beach of that river, you create essentially white, beautiful, salty sand beach in the middle of the desert. Now, there's issue with that. What happens if all this water now drains through the bottom of the river and contaminates the water supply, like drinking water? That's an issue. You need to isolate it with a special plastic liners, whatever. So there's many issues there, environmental issues and whatnot. But they'll create Beersheba River in the desert. It will transform the climate in the entire south. And Bedouins will say, we just want camels and desert. We don't need any river. So
Leo, are you talking about recycling the water and running it around a circle?
if you make an artificial river, as it flows down, it's the same water, right? Recycle it. So you have to bring it back.
You pump it back to the beginning and runs.
You
I
pump
see.
it
Okay,
back and you create like a
basically
lake.
like a river fountain where you're recycling the water around and around.
Kind of similar in a little bigger scale. Like the area you and I drove on our bicycles in a lake. That lake can essentially feed that canal, which flows down 10 kilometers. And then on the bottom of that canal, there's a pumping station, huge 4 or 6 pumps. And they pump it back to a second canal. You have 2 rivers, one flowing down the hill and then up the hill. But that's a lot of energy. Who's going to pay for all that? That is where we bring the donors from US to show them how wonderfully they help the humanitarian causes.
Yes, it'd be a good application for solar fields, around the outskirts of Beersheba too.
Yeah. Solar panels.
To power the pumps, to send it back the 10 kilometers. To power the pumps, we could use solar energy as well.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Well, what's your idea about the salt? It seems to me if you put salt next to the river, it's just gonna dissolve the salt into the water, and that's gonna start contaminating the groundwater and everything.
But I'm thinking to put the salt on the banks of the river, not in the river itself.
But why? Because I mean, if you want anything, you want sand, you don't want salt. The salt is gonna, I mean, if you step on that and you have a little cut in your foot,
It's
gonna
probably,
sting like crazy.
if you're sitting on a mountain of salt, it's probably irritating to a hiney sitting on it, I would imagine. But
Yes,
that I
You have
agree with that.
you have Heine problems.
You have a high, but imagine it's a whiteness of it. Imagine there's hundreds of tons of, if you're sitting on a beach, instead of sitting on the sand, you're sitting on salt. So salt. I mean, there's no
Sounds kind
flies
of
probably, right? Because it's
sounds like a
salt.
kind of forcocked idea.
But
It
yeah,
is a little bit. Listen, that's why we need the government in exile, us, to get all these questions and brainwashing and brainstorming how to solve that, you know. So that's that's our project, big and small.
Okay.
That's all I have to report, guys. For
Can I bring up,
Go.
Lev, can I bring up a different subject around Rosh Hashanah?
Shoot.
Sure.
We were discussing on our walk home from Slichot services at night, or maybe it was Motzei Shabbat. We were talking about the idea that Slichot repetitively over the course of a month or over the course of the week that we're doing it every night, that it could be a little bit too much emotionally. This is something that you brought up with me, and I thought this was an interesting topic. Because, you know, it's the cheshbon nefesh that we're doing during the course of Elul and getting ready for Yom Kippur, you know, for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, is already tough enough. But to begin with this, you know, extensive slichot thing, it makes it even more challenging emotionally. And I wanted you to, can you talk a little bit more about what you were feeling about that? I know I'm changing the subject a lot, but
No, it's good, Daniel. Well, what we talk about it, guys, you know, and of course, what nice thing about the group, we can say whatever we feel like saying, and nobody will criticize. My feeling is, I always did slichot traditionally, you know, go every day for the 7-10 days, whatever, at 10:30 at night, at 12 o'clock, do slichot. Sephardi do it like 1 month before. I always did it. And lately, in the last maybe 5-10 years, I always question myself. And many people will say this is heretical thoughts. But I almost I've done a lot of teshuvah in my life. You know, I always bug Reuven and Jonathan, especially with the problems that I always challenge. And who hasn't had the problems in their life? We all have our individual problems, challenges with the family, challenges with the friends, whatnot. And I also question why I do that. And I ask myself so much forgiveness over the last years that I'm forgiven out. I have no more energy to ask any. I ask all my family that I offended or hurt 100 times. Some forgave me, some didn't. So I say, you know what? I go to Slichot one time. I ask forgiveness, and I say, God, I have no more energy. I'm not going to 10:30 for another Slichot. I'm done. Please excuse me one more time. I don't want, and that's
I
it.
found something very interesting. It's in Torah Tidbits.
Okay.
And it was by this let's see if I can see it. Well, it's by Rabbi Yehuda Misho. So he wrote, Slichas whistle while you work. He said, often we carry the heavy burden of our mistakes, can feel weighed down by the pain of guilt, remorse, and regret for wrongdoings and failures. We might at times feel oppressed by the possibility we have not been forgiven, that vidui didn't produce the heights of forgiveness for us. It may even appear as if the negative terminology of vidui presents a challenge or an obstacle to tshuva. So Rav Avraham Yitzchak HaKohen Cook addresses this kind of collateral damage it can result, especially when one who has developed spiritual sensitivity, yiras shamayim, and a fear of wrongdoing, recognizes that he may have done something to disappoint the Creator. Knowing that we are infinitely indebted to Hashem and constantly responsible for them makes the awareness of a shortcoming terribly painful. Rav Hakuk writes, in this case, we shouldn't just passively wait for Hashem to remove the pain and impose upon us a sense of being forgiven. He writes, it's translation here, one who grieves constantly for his sins and the sins of the world must constantly forgive and absolve himself and the whole world. In doing so, he draws forgiveness and a light of loving kindness onto all of being and brings joy to God and to his creatures. He must first forgive himself and afterward cast a broad forgiveness over all, the nearest to him first, on the branches of the roots of the soul, and on his family, his loved ones, his generation, and his world, in all worlds. And thus is revealed all the good that is hidden away in everything. So forgiving ourselves, the writer Michel says, and letting go of immobilizing guilt might sound like a difficult maneuver as well. But if we meditate in the words of Vidu text, we will see deeper meaning in the repeated phrase of Allah chet shekatanu lefanecha, forgive us for the sin we committed lefanecha, in front of you. So he says, like Rav Kook says, we should, if we can't feel the weight of this constant video is too much, we should just forgive ourselves, forgive those around us, and that Hashem will find joy in that, and it'll bring loving kindness to his creatures. The Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, said that in previous generations they were able to tolerate a lot of gevura, severity, because it was a strong generation and they were attuned to that. But he said our generation is much weaker, and our generation really can't tolerate too much gevura. He said, so we can no longer try to reach out to people by threatening them with, gehinnom and all sorts of punishments. We can only use chesed, kindness, and loving kindness in this generation. So in the same way, I think, the words of the Slichos, they were written for a generation that was very different than ours. They were much tougher emotionally and spiritually, and they went through a lot more suffering than we do. So they were pretty tough. And I think the Slichos was meaningful to them, but for us, it can actually be a little overbearing, and it's beyond us. So we should, I think we should try the Rav Kook said. It really touched me, to turn it around and say, okay, why don't we use forgiveness for ourselves, for our loved ones, for the people near us, and ask for forgiveness for the whole world, for everybody who needs it. And that way, instead of you just passive and waiting, oh, here's me, turn it around, become proactive, reach out in love. It's you can learn from everybody. Even the Buddhists say that one of the meditations they do is that all creatures should be happy. That all creatures should be healthy, and all creatures should feel safe.
Amen. Amen.
Free of threat.
But
Project this out to the world.
But it's wonderful. But if I did it all that, it's very frankly, and I exhausted my forgiveness. Can I go for another month, for another 29 days in Safari, or at least for a week, every day, repeat the same thing? Wouldn't I say to myself, I already said it yesterday. I'm sorry. What can I do today again?
Well, I think it's one of the things is, it's hard to put kavanah into the same words over and over. But, I remember somebody once asked the pianist, Arthur Rubinstein, he says, don't you get tired of playing the same thing over and over and over? He said, well, the sex is the same thing. You get tired of doing it again and again. He said, no, the trick is to do it a little different each time. It's the same with music. So it's the same with, with davening, to add a little something new each time, or to come to it from a different angle.
Interesting. You unmute, Danny, unmute yourself. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. One of the things that you said is that it's important to forgive yourself first. Meaning you ask forgiveness for those you're wrong, but a lot of the source of the pain, I think, is the internal grief of being the person you didn't want to be, and trying to turn that around and to say, okay, I missed the mark, but I can do better, and I'm going to try, even though I feel maybe a little bit ashamed. But with Hashem's help, I can turn it around.
Amen. Guys, we only have 15
So I
seconds.
think that was the element, one of the elements.
Yes. Guys, let's continue. This is wonderful. We'll finish on this good, positive note, guys. Shana Tova. Next time, let's continue. Forgiveness and peace and brotherhood. Shana Tova. Yom Tov. Love you.
Amen.